Hello and welcome to Player Psychology in Game Design. I'm Skye01. Just a little bit about me. I've got a master's in arts in game design. I've got a bachelor's in arts and game studies. I'm an educator and academic. A lot of what I do is teaching and beyond that, the breakdown of things, topics, and subjects into a bit more digestible manner, as I would hope. My specific field of study, my study interests, are in player psychology, specifically as it relates to player relationships with games, developers, cultures, and societies, and the unique and dynamic ways in which all of those interact with one another. And I'm also an indie game dev on the side, as many of us tend to be. I do everything except for audio composition. I have to make games on my own, but I'm still working with a studio, Team Robo, an indie studio. I'm also a freelance artist in my free time, like just draw and so on. On the right, you'll see it's a picture of me mid-teaching. One of my students snapped it while I was drawing on the board. This is before I had access to projectors and slides, so I just drew that. And yeah, let's get right into it. First off, what is player psychology? Simply put, it is the way a player thinks, and the study of the way a player thinks specifically, because ology. And why is that important? Well, pretty simply, by knowing how a player thinks, knowing how certain things affect players, and the way they think and the way they approach a game, directly changes the way that they experience your game, the way they expect things from your game, the way they expect from different things and from you as a developer, and how you can manipulate that, how you can control that to make them experience the things you want them to experience. Let's see, and yeah, by anticipating player thinking, player expectations, and how they'll act in response to or preemptively towards your game and different things, we can both predict and influence them. The best example, I would say, is in tutorials. Teaching the player how to play the game by giving them the controls, giving them the rules. Here's how the game works. This is what you do. Press these buttons to move around, or you don't even have a character that moves around. Instead, this is the main menu of your thing. This is, in fact, a management sim. This is your hub for different things. And this is you teaching, as a designer, the player how to play, quote-unquote. Though, of course, how to play is more than just the controls and the core gameplay loop. You are telling them the core gameplay loop, obviously, but further, you're telling the player how you expect them to play. Maybe that's not what you intended to do. Maybe you just want to give them controls and you want them to figure it out. But are you telling them properly? Are you communicating properly through your game, through your tutorial, through the first parts of your game, that you want them to figure things out, explicitly or implicitly? Regardless, the player is going to think, generally, this is you explaining how the game works. And to them, they're thinking, how does the developer want me to play? And broadly speaking, there are different types of players. And going back real quickly again, you might not be telling them exact builds or play styles or specific like skill trees. Which class should you choose? Maybe you're recommending certain ones as beginner friendly, or maybe you're not at all. You're just like, here's 3 classes: mage, warrior, and an archer, and go forth. This is how you play. Here are the buttons you press, and go. You might not be telling them certain classes are better or what it might be outright, but players will be seeking this out, first of all, and second of all, they are going to take away things from the first parts of your game, be it tutorial or the stuff afterwards, regardless of intended or not. And that's why it's important to, as we're talking about now, think about player psychology. Think about how they're thinking, and think about how you're presenting the game. More on that later. There are broadly speaking, three main different types of players, especially in terms of how they approach your game, how they approach playing a game. Starting from the bottom up, the most common, I would say, are the go-with-the-flow types of players. They don't think too much. They're not even thinking necessarily about, like, the developer, the designer, what are the people behind the game trying to tell me. Instead, they're gonna be thinking, okay, I've just started up the game. Okay, cool, here's a tutorial. I press these buttons to do these things. Okay, you've given me a big giant arrow, or I can't do anything other than click on this button that opens this menu. Okay, you finish the tutorial section, and now they're like, okay, oh, the first quest says, optionally, I should go to this town. Well, sure, it's the first thing I see, I'll do it. Slightly similarly, there is the playing it right crowd. These are the kind of players that are thinking, either whether they realize it or not, what does the developers want me to do? What is the intended playstyle? Because they believe and they trust that if I play the game how it's intended, how you've designed it to, I trust that you are designed to be as fun as possible, so I think I'll have the most fun if I do what you want me to do. Of course, I have my own choices, my own agency, and I like to see my impact, my actions reflected in the game, but broadly speaking, I want to know how I'm supposed to play. I want to play it right. I feel like there is a wrong way to play, and that is usually what you, the developers, the designers, are not intending me to play it. There's some truth to this in that you'll find far more bugs and crashes, and perhaps less well-balanced things in the areas that the developers and the designers didn't intend on you to play necessarily. But this is just about how a lot of players think about, quote, playing it right. And finally, one other very significant kind of player are the unconventional ones. These are the exploiters, the achievers, the limit testers, the trailblazers. They specifically asked a question, okay, what do you want me to do? And great, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna do completely opposite of that. Okay, great, you're telling me this is how combat should work? You're telling me that this is not turn-based, but instead, here's the enemy, here's me, and you're telling me to go forward, hit it, and then dodge, and then come back and hit it again. You want me to have the cycle of dodging and attacking and dodging and attacking, or defending and attacking. You want me to drink potions between each attack. You want me to pause and take it slow, maybe. Or maybe it's fast and action-packed, but it's this way. What if I don't? What if I avoid all enemies? Can I beat this game without fighting a single enemy? Can I beat this game without dodging a single time? Can I beat this game by just rushing the monster out and just not giving it a chance to breathe? Can I stun lock the monster? You don't even know if stunning is a thing that is in this game, but the players will be given, here's how you do combat. And they're gonna think, okay, I'm not gonna do that. Or, now that I have the tools, the controls, now that I know what you want me to do, how I'm supposed to play the game, or what I think I'm supposed to, I'm gonna do completely the opposite of that. But regardless, they are still thinking very carefully, or at least very consciously and very intentionally, about what do you, the designer, the developers, want them to do. Just another example of how important this is. And now, as I mentioned before, the tutorial part, quote-unquote, very explicitly exists in a different mental and literal zone. The literal zone being the first starting part of your game, the tutorial. You're telling them controls. The tutorial might be as simple as, here's a pop-up, and here's all the controls, and do it. Or it could be a bit more complex. You might be making the player do certain things. You might be locking them, not letting them press any button other than the one that moves, or the one that closes this menu, or the one that opens this menu. Or you might be like, here's the controls, and do stuff. But crucially, it is more than just the controls. A lot of players will think of the tutorial part as any part of the game where you're still meant to be learning, where the developers are intending you, the player, to be learning different things, to be thinking of different things, and crucially, in this stage, in this initial stage of learning, players are thinking, okay, what happens here, I should remember for the future, and informs how developers want me to play, how they intend the game to be, how they design the game around. And further, players also know that beyond the explicit tutorial zone, there's still learning to be done. Players know that the tutorial does not tell them everything. I would argue some of the most fun parts of many games is the initial learning curve. It is learning, okay, I've got the tutorial, I fully recognize the tutorial is done, or maybe I'm almost off the tutorial, but now I'm free to really start engaging with the systems, or like exploring, finding what there is, and really learning what is the game about. Not just what you say it is, not just what you've told me so far. Like, of course, I know the classes, I've chosen one, I know the skills, I know I'm supposed to do combat like this, but what is the core gameplay loop beyond the core gameplay loop? How do certain things work? And to draw back a little bit even, what is play conditioning? This is a term coined by H-Bomber Guy in 2017 in his YouTube video in defense of Dark Souls 2. In this section where he talks about play conditioning, he tells a story about his friend who just really never really clicked with Dark Souls and Demon Souls and the Soulsborne games. And that's because they first played Demon Souls 1, and very early on in that game, you get a shield. And what his friend thought was, okay, I get a shield, I must need the shield. And so they played super defensively. They kept the shield up, and almost every turn, they're slowly sneaking their way through the dungeons, through the swamps, and at every turn, they're keeping their shield up. When they first encounter a jump attack, a surprise attack, they turn a corner, and boom, 3 enemies, they get smacked and killed immediately. What they think then is, oh, I should keep my shield up when turning corners. Maybe even just all of the time, because you never know when a monster's gonna come out at you. And when they get into a boss fight, they're like, oh, I have to keep my shield up the whole time. I have to stay slow, turtle up, and watch for the attack patterns, and then slowly learn it, and then just really try and survive until then. But that's not really fun. Most people would agree, the most fun ways to play Soulsborne games is to be aggressive, to attack, to die and learn new attack patterns because you're actually chipping their damage down, their HP down, you're dealing damage, you're being aggressive, and you see more of their attack patterns and the way they change, the way they attack, the way they move, when you are, 1, dying to them, and 2, you dealt enough damage for it to change to a different phase. And it's just generally more action-packed and more fun to be actively, aggressively attacking them as opposed to defensively playing. But the H-Bomber Guy's friend was not wrong necessarily in thinking, oh, they've given me a shield, this must mean that I need to use the shield. That's perfectly reasonable to think, because that shield giving them so early on has conditioned them towards playing with this certain playstyle of using the shield all the time. And that's not necessarily good. That was misleading, because later on in Bloodborne, they completely correct that by, 1, outright giving you a gun. You get 2 weapons from the get-go, and they're both real weapons. You're meant to attack with them. Parrying is no longer just countering. Instead, by parrying, parrying has always been around, but parrying is the aggressive method of deflecting and progressing, and just being aggressive while dodging or just countering damage. And that's one of the most important things, the earliest things you learn in Bloodborne, and you even get a shield in that game, the only shield I think that exists, that very explicitly in its name, in its description, is making fun of people that only play Soulsborne games with the shield up. You seek out the shield, or maybe you're given one, and all you do is turtle up. You never actually, quote-unquote, engage with the game. It's because the game is meant to, as it turns out, as it seems, be played completely aggressively. You're supposed to go in, you're supposed to die and suffer and learn from that. And that's the cautionary tale of play conditioning. And my question for you as a designer, as a developer, is what is the intended playstyle of your game? And perhaps more importantly, is there one? Maybe you've got a bunch of different skill trees, like in Dark Souls. You've got all these weapons, you've got magic, you've got you've got magic, you've got melee weapons of all different sizes, all different weights, and all different attack speeds. You've got shields, the tower shield, and the most entertaining way I've seen people use it is to stun lock people or to knock people and enemies away. You've got all these different things, and the game wasn't telling you to play a certain way necessarily, but Dave, H-Bomber Guy's friend, was conditioned to via said shield. And so you might not necessarily have intended the player to play a certain way, but you might have told them, intentionally or not, explicitly or not, that there is a certain way to play. And that's the cautionary tale. And crucially, you should take a look at what actually happens to your player after the tutorial part, after the tutorial ends, and the initial stage of learning begins, or maybe it's blurred. Maybe the formal tutorial ends, you've given them the controls, you've given them the first quest ever, and they're out of the starting town, but they might still be learning, and they might still be finding direct tooltips from you, the designer, or they may be finding indirect tooltips. They might be finding only in the second town, the first NPC that comes up to them and tells them, oh, there is a plague about these times, and that's how you're introducing the environmental, the area-specific debuff of poison, or you're slowed in this zone. And you're learning new mechanics, so you're still in at the initial stage of learning. Or perhaps just simply stage of learning. And so, yeah, crucially, this is me telling you to please, not just from player feedback and hearing what players have to say about their gameplay experience without the first few whatever minutes or hour of your game, but also, if you can, get footage or just take in, look over their shoulder if you're playtesting something in person, and see how they're experiencing the game. See how they're reacting. Maybe ask questions during or after about specific parts of the game. Maybe you're noticing just in gameplay in itself that, after I set you free and I'm like, here are 3 different areas to go to start exploring if you want to, some pointers as to where to start exploring in my open world adventure. And most players keep choosing this one. Why? Is it because it's simply the first option, and players are lazy and keep choosing just the first thing they see because they don't really feel like there's anything special? And if so, maybe that comes in the form of you as a designer or you as a narrative designer have not presented what makes these 3 areas different. Why would players want to go to different areas for different reasons? Maybe it's as simple as this one is slightly lower difficulty. The average level of this is lower than your current starting level or whatever. Or maybe this one is slightly more difficult. Or you might tell them straight up, here are 3 areas that you might want to go to. First one, mining. Second one, combat. Third one, farming. And that tells the player different kinds of, different types of content, different types of gameplay in the game, and so they now have a purpose to choose certain ones over the other. And these are things you can think about, and you might only start thinking about when you see the players only ever choose one, or when you watch a player choose, and you thought they might take a bit more time, being like, which one should I go to, or which direction should I set off in? And you're watching them just go, okay, I'm just going to start walking. Or, okay, I'm just going to choose the first one. And maybe you don't want them to just choose the first one. Maybe you don't even want them to think so hard. Maybe you just wanted to give them some suggestions for to start moving. This is to the north, this is to the west. But what you actually wanted, where you intended them to play the playstyle as, or just intended them to play, is full-on freedom of just like, I don't want to influence how you play. I'm just giving you suggestions so you don't feel lost, but I really want you to explore on your own. In that case, maybe frame it as such, instead of saying outright, and here are 3 places you could go to. Maybe say, now you're free to explore and adventure. And if you don't know where to start, maybe start with here, or if you want to do it a bit more immersively. And if you don't know where to start, a good place to ask around for places of interest is always at the tavern. And they place a little NPC there that the player can go to and ask, like, hey, are there any interesting places around here? Or, where should an adventurer go that's trying to make a name for themselves in honorable combat, or whatever? Or where should I go to make money? And these are ways to give the player agency in leading in this playstyle of, I want the player to choose what they want to do. Because if you want them to do that, you have to also give them options. You have to give them reasons why. You have to give them direction. And in certain ways, direction will lead to them not playing that way, and to them thinking, I'm playing it wrong if I'm not choosing the things that you, designer, have shown me. Versus, oh, okay, this is an option, this is a suggestion. What you, as a developer, want me to do is play how I want to, and you want me specifically to choose these different things that exist in the world that you've now told me exist, but with the specific setting of the veneer of I should be choosing, and there's not any one of these that's better than the other, or that you want me to see first. Just sort of whatever. That's important. That's presentation. And this is one example of how you can get ahead of that, how you can act after having taken a look at what actually happens to your player after a tutorial ends. Initial stage of learning, or even just overall a gameplay, even further than that, though it's most efficient at the start. And one example to further exemplify is if you introduce food and gold in your tutorial as two very important resources, but the player learns through playing immediately after the tutorial or during the tutorial that, oh, okay, you've shown me a trade system for buying food using gold, and even other resources too, maybe. And you've shown me multiple different ways to get gold, and maybe one of those ways also gives me food, like I can quest in certain ways, but it's so much easier to get gold than it is to get food. So why should I bother getting food? In fact, if gold is so important and so much easier to get, then I should be focusing on earning money, earning gold, to then buy food. And I'm gonna view any quests, any missions that reward food as less valuable, because it is because of balance. This is the second bullet point here. Balance affects mentality. If certain things are clearly better than others, players are going to think either the developers intended for it to be like this, because this resource is so rare, I should go out my way to get it, or it's a reward if I get this, it's something I should go out my way for, versus, oh, I should just focus on earning gold instead of trying to really engage with the system that might be there that lets me farm and get food, because why would I do that when it's so much easier just to get gold? Similarly, as I talked about with play conditioning, with Ishmael story about his friend and the shield, introducing something early on can cause a player to assume that it's important, because they typically do, because they're in the tutorial part, or they're assuming if the tutorial's formally over, they're in the initial stages of learning. They might still think that until they're given a sign, usually they think this is still the tutorial part. And if they're not given a sign, they might just be thinking, okay, well, it feels like it should probably be over, right? But regardless, if it's in first starting stages, they're gonna assume something is important if you show it to them early on, or if you simply even introduce it whatsoever in the early stages. And then also the final one being patterns of game activity affect the way players perceive things and the way players are thinking as well, player psychology. Example. You've given them 3 classes to choose from for your adventure RPG. Mage, warrior, and archer. The archer and warrior, it's melee versus ranged, but they're both physical, and the mage is magic. But all the enemies you seem to keep encountering from the tutorial, or just outside the tutorial, from the starting town to the second town, from the first dungeon to the second dungeon, they seem to just be enemies that are strong against physical, but weak against magic. And the player might think, oh, should I just be playing a mage? You didn't tell me that, or maybe you did. Maybe you said that a mage is beginner-friendly. But you're thinking, okay, well, am I going to eventually find monsters that are weak to physical and strong against magic? But I seem to just keep finding monsters that are strong against physical and weak against magic, and I'm not a mage, and I don't really know, like, am I supposed to play as a mage, or, like, am I supposed to get a way to deal magic damage later on? In which case, am I gonna get it in my skill tree? Is there a skill tree? Am I gonna get, like, a weapon later that looks for it? Am I going to be given it? And if it is hypothetical, you've designed it to be that, the players, if you don't start them as a mage, you have to find the magical weapons. But you intended for this. They're supposed to explore. You've put them in multiple different chests, in, like, the starting areas, or you think is close enough to the starting areas. But if the players don't find them, and all they do is keep finding enemies that need magic damage, what they're gonna think is, oh, I should just play a mage, or oh, I must be missing something. And so crucially, are you telling the player that this is the intended playstyle in this way of you should explore until you find a magical weapon, and in the way of, oh, if you start as a mage, this is just it's beginner friendly because you sort of skip having to find a weapon, just from the get-go get to deal damage effectively. And a player takeaway is going to be, they want me to play a mage. I can't find a weapon, or I don't want to wait until I find the thing, because I don't know when I'll be able to deal damage, if ever. Maybe I'm just supposed to play as a mage. Maybe the warrior and archer is hard mode. What they meant by beginner friendly is simply like normal people, and hard mode is that. Maybe. And that's because you haven't told them how they're supposed to be. You haven't told them more about this. The counter simply being, tell them about it. If the intended playstyle or the intended gameplay, how to play, is that all the classes are viable. Mage just gets you there a little bit faster, but there are plenty of magical weapons. You have to tell them they exist, one, and you have to tell them that they're supposed to explore for them, because if you do it directly or indirectly, if you do a tooltip being like, there are magic weapons, find one, and you'll be able to defeat these monsters with ease. Or indirectly, you just place a little NPC that they meet very quickly, very early on in the game, maybe even in the tutorial or shortly after it in the initial stage of learning, that tells them, hey, did you hear? There are magical weapons strewn about these days. I hear there's one in the dungeon just a town over. Or, maybe their straight just gave you one, but more likely you want to explore, so tell them about the fact that they exist. And just in telling the player about this, they're gonna think not just, oh, they exist, but also, oh, okay, when they exist. And when they encounter the pattern of finding monsters, so many monsters that are weak against magic but strong against physical, they're gonna connect the dots and think, hopefully, they'll connect the dots and think, oh, okay, I need a magic weapon. I know they exist, and actually I know they're just in that dungeon around here, or I could find them somewhere. But more importantly, they now know that they're supposed to find them, that it exists, and this is what they're supposed to do. And now players can then choose to be unconventional. They can choose to forcibly punch their way through anyway. They might try and find an exploit that lets them deal a true damage, or build a true damage build if those exist, instead of doing magic. They might insist on a, can I beat the game with no magic run? But this gives the player agency. This lets them know, either just simply, crucially, is there intended playstyle? Are you telling them that there is? Are you telling them what it is properly? Or are you just giving them all the information they need to be able to play your game the way you want them to? Or at least play the game in a way that won't frustrate them and leave them confused, unless that's intentional. And also, even to draw back from that, sometimes your game isn't unbalanced the way a player says it is. A player might say that, oh, the game is unbalanced, the mages are too powerful, but in truth, it might not be that. It might just be that the mages just deal off damage early on because all the monsters are weak against magic. In terms of numbers, it's not the classes you have to tweak. They all deal about the same damage. They deal effectively more damage because sooner you deal magic damage sooner to all of these enemies that are weak to magic. But what you might actually want to change to affect, to fix what the players are feeling, which is that, oh, if I don't do magic, if I'm not mage, it feels clunky because I feel ineffective. I know I can get a magic weapon, but it doesn't feel the same. It feels like I have to only use this weapon to be able to be effective. So maybe change the balance of the enemies that show up. Maybe give them more physical weak monsters earlier, or mix them up a lot more. Maybe the first dungeon is really long, in which case sprinkle in some physical ones too, even if they don't really match the theme, or make it work in some way. And just, yeah, if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to me on Discord. In the EGD server, I am just Skye. I'm usually online. You can message me. You can ping me in the Discord server. You can message me directly. Or you can email me with any further questions, inquiries, or connect with me on LinkedIn. Feel free 100%. And yeah, if you have any other questions, please let me know. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. I would love to hear more about other people, about designers, from what they think about about this, about how they've sort of counter how the strategies you have against players thinking certain ways, or as a player, maybe not even as a designer, but as a player, maybe you are one of these kinds of players. Maybe you do go out of your way to play against a grain, so to speak. I would love to hear back from you, and yeah, thank you so much.